Home, Chapter 68. A Miraculous Ladybug Fanfiction written and narrated by Mira Rose. If you have not heard the previous 67 chapters of this story, you can find a link to them in the description box below. If you haven't already, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment on this video, and if you don't know what to comment, put Adrien wouldn't be an aggressed. Now then, please enjoy Home, Chapter 68. Adrien Graham de Vanley as Cat Noir. Trigger warning. Panic attacks. Today was a good day. Cat started the day off bright and early at the bakery, spent a hot minute in Marinette's apartment, and then played villain in Heroes and Victims at the park, which was the new playground game for elementary students, apparently. So, when he got home, greeted Nino and returned to his office-turned-bedroom and closed the door behind him to detransform, he had an unexpected stress attack. His jacket with the handkerchief. His jacket with the handkerchief was at Marinette's apartment. Oh no, he whispered as Plagg went for the mini-fridge post-transformation.
What? Did you finally realize we haven't picked up that cheese I've been aging from Leon's cheese store? Plagg piped up.
I left that handkerchief at Marinette's, he whispered.
You humans are weird. If she sees it, you're still super in love with her, right? So what's the problem?
I can't just tell her that. What if she... He cut himself off, not wanting to finish even the idea of it.
You had no problems telling her your feelings when your father was her arch nemesis.
Adrien sighed, collapsing onto the couch serving as his bed. That's different.
You humans are weird.
Cheese breath.
Cheese is easier than woman.
He took a breath, knowing Plagg wouldn't be too pleased about getting called back to the ring so soon, but he wanted to grab the jacket before Marinette could see it. Was it even possible to go out without the mask? He'd been able to make eye contact today without the mask on, so... And it was eye contact with someone he knew, not a stranger, so it should be easier to go out, right? Okay, let's try it. Adrien grabbed a pair of sunglasses to be on the safe side and opened the window, stepping out onto the fire escape. Okay. Yeah. He could do this. He could go out in public without a mask. He could, until someone saw him, that is. A person on their fire escape across the alley saw him and waved, and he immediately stumbled back into the apartment, tumbling onto the hardwood without grace and with bumped elbows and bruised kneecaps. Someone saw him. Someone saw him. Adrien aggressed. Someone saw him. The son of Hawkmoth. In public. Adrien tried to calm himself, telling himself it was all right. He had sunglasses on and he was too far away. But other thoughts, like his jawline and build, poisoned his mind and constricted his chest. He couldn't breathe, even though his lungs pumped air in and out.
Oh, kid,
he heard Plagg say above him. Or maybe he was across the room. He wasn't sure. He didn't care. He wished he wasn't this weak. He begged himself to get it together. He heard a noise outside his door, but it just made things worse. Someone seeing him as Adrien was this bad. If someone seeing him as Adrien was this bad, how could he possibly let someone see what a mess of a child he was? He needed to use his voice. He needed to transform. 2 words, even choked out, would take him out of this. 2 words out of his compressed throat, tight with his trauma and anxiety. He could do it. He could say it. He couldn't breathe. Minutes passed, or maybe hours, but eventually Adrien caught himself off the floor and onto the couch, face sore and lungs burning. Okay. Perhaps today wasn't a good day after all. That, and he'd proven to himself Marinette was the exception, not the rule. 2, almost 3 weeks ago, he'd stood in front of her without a mask and been just fine. But that was the only one he'd done that for in... he couldn't remember how long. Even when he met Natalie again, he'd worn the mask, which wasn't a big deal because she knew who he was after living at the temple together. His lungs still burned from the attack. How shameful. A superhero with PTSD, but not from actually being a superhero. Michael Jackson had nothing on his body dysmorphia, although his song was a bop. But his song was right. He had to start with the man in the mirror. He'd held eye contact with Marinette today. That was a win. He'd made the decision to go out without a mask today. Even if he wasn't successful, that's a win. 2 wins. He'd earned 2 wins today. That's 2 wins he didn't have yesterday. That's 2 wins he didn't have this morning. But it didn't feel like it, especially with the physical wear of his failure weighing his body and mind. But today was still a good day, right? Unable to pry himself from the haze of time, Adrien heard a knock from the door and realized Plag was curled up, asleep on his shoulder. He didn't know how, but his Kwame took care of him this time too, didn't he?
Yes?
He cracked out. It's me. It's Marinette. If it weren't for his snoozing buddy, Adrien would have sat up straight. His torso held him in place, sore from his meltdown.
Yeah?
He called back. May I come in? Adrien looked at the blanket beside him. He'd be a fool to try this again. Right? He wasn't a glutton for punishment.
Just give me a moment.
Taking a deep breath, Adrien pulled the blanket over his head, a Snuggie fort wrapped around him like he was watching a friend play a Zelda game while sitting on his floor in elementary.
Okay,
he croaked out. He heard the door squeak open and made a mental note to oil the hinges as she stepped in. A Snuggie fort? He heard her say gently.
That's what I call it too,
Adrien said through the fabric. I, brought your jacket back.
Thanks.
You doing all right?
Why do you ask?
Plag called me. He called her? Without breaking his phone in the process?
Oh.
May I touch you? He hesitated at the request.
Sure.
He felt a hand land on his knee through the fabric before another cupped the crown of his head, sliding down before going back for another pat. Do you need to call in for the bakery tomorrow?
Are you petting me right now?
What? Marinette squeaked and he heard her stumble back, the touch retreating. Oops. He shouldn't have said anything. It felt nice.
I'm teasing.
Oh!
I'm still your cat, after all.
Would that be enough to lighten the mood? He felt the cushion shift as she sat beside him. even though you're technically more qualified to be the guardian? Adrien couldn't help but smile at the challenge in her voice.
I'm never gonna live that one down, am I?
Never.
A shame.
He felt her arm wrap around him and, for a moment, thought she was going to put her head on his shoulder. To his surprise, she pulled him to what was probably her shoulder, or perhaps her collarbone. Regardless, this blanket was getting a little too warm. But he let her. He let her hold him and closed his eyes, masked in the safety of a blue fleece blanket. She rubbed from his shoulder to his elbow and back, and if he were masked, he probably would have purred. He was home. Oh, how he missed this. But it was a dangerous, scandalous feeling. How could he possibly let go when she wanted to leave? "Can you breathe?" she asked, her voice carrying through him like a friend. It was a good thing she couldn't see his face. He was crying.
"Yeah,"
he choked out.
Just fine."
"Okay." She wrapped both arms around him and squeezed, an embrace he hadn't braced himself for. "I don't share your experiences, but I know how hard it was for me and my troubles." He couldn't bear to ask her what she'd gone through these past few years. He couldn't bear to learn if he was a part of it.
"Thanks for coming."
"Well, I couldn't just hang on to your jacket, now could I?" Adrien laughed, but it came out as more of a cough.
"Right."
Her hands traveled up his shoulders and settled themselves on the crown of his head, feeling her abs contract before feeling pressure atop his head. Oh. This was a kiss. "Want to watch something?" he heard her say above him. He looked down at Plag, who'd fallen into the crevice of his elbow, still fast asleep.
Tell you what."
She pushed him off of her. "I'll see you at the bakery tomorrow, okay?"
Okay."
He looked up at her, which was silly because there was a blanket over his face and he couldn't see through fabric.
"See you then."
Adrien all but flinched when she put her hands on his shoulder, but the anxiety of the touch slipped away when he felt her press her lips to his forehead. Oh, it was a good thing she couldn't see his face right now. He was sure his expression would give away his feelings for her. She was his home. She always had been, even if his family was in Tibet. She was the love and the center of his life, a gravity for his sanity as he dragged himself through the past few years, doing what he had to do to keep his bloodline afloat while a black hole carved a chasm into his chest with her absence. This obsession wasn't healthy. How would she react if she knew he wanted to be anything other than friends? He'd be the new villain if it meant keeping her by his side. But no, he wasn't his father. He wouldn't be his father. No matter what, Adrien wouldn't let himself become an aggressed. He saw what taking that name did to his mother, and he didn't want to take after his father. No matter what, Adrien wouldn't be an aggressed. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel and leave a comment in the comment section if you don't know what to say. Gosh, I don't know. Think of one. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.